There are too many American beliefs that we're forced to believe just because we were raised in America. From saluting every single flag to how America is always the greatest nation in the entire world. But when I visited Australia for the first time, that was the moment I realized how many lies I've actually been told about America. And I didn't realize how many things that are normal in Australia were actually broken back in America. So today I'm breaking down the top 5 biggest American myths that I don't believe in anymore after seeing how Aussies live their life in Australia. And we'll be going through all of them from the smallest to the biggest one that breaks everything you ever believe about life in America. Now let's get right into it. But let's talk about why I picked Australia. Because it's no secret that Americans like myself know nothing about the world. We think we're better than Canada, Europe, but especially Australia. But I still remember my American friends traveling to and from Australia telling me how everything is different and way better, and it kind of sparked the curiosity inside me that I just had to come here and see it for myself. After finally making the decision to travel across Australia this year, I don't think I'll ever look at America and the American dream the same ever again. Because the first lie we kept telling ourselves is how America is the land of the free, and how it's for the people by the people. Because on the surface, Americans seem to be free, and we can do whatever we want. That's why you come here and you see rubbish all over the place. Because hey, freedom for everyone, y'all. And apparently we're also the only democracy in the world, because only Americans can openly criticize our politicians and no one else. Bet you want to move to America right about now. But coming to Australia, I was literally shocked to find out how Aussies took freedom to another level. They have the freedom that comes with having their healthcare covered so they can worry less about emergency medical needs. University is cheaper, reliable public transport that takes you almost anywhere, an actual work-life balance where you don't have to stay up late, work unpaid overtime, and have to be reachable 24/7 like Americans. And these are things that help Aussies create the free life. They also help me realize that freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequence. In America, you can promote your hate speech publicly under the protection of freedom of speech. Yes, even the super extreme political ones. But in Australia, my Aussie friend said any speech promoting a terrible mindset and behavior could get you locked up, y'all. And you notice how Australia's streets and beaches are always clean and everything's well organized? Well, that's because your freedom of throwing away rubbish affects the freedom of others to enjoy a clean and beautiful city. So Aussies found a balance between everyone and their freedom, while American freedom still solely focuses on the selfish individual level of doing whatever you want. And that's the biggest reason why I believe America will never be as safe as Australia. Also, only in Australia that I finally realized that the freedom of religion that we have in America does not mean freedom from religion. As if you look all over Australia, it doesn't matter if someone is religious or not. People become friends and life goes on. But in America, most of the time, your family and friends will keep forcing their religion onto you until you finally become one of them. But you might be surprised to find out that Americans and Aussies have more in common than you would want to admit. And that is how fast you can click the subscribe button if you enjoyed the video so far. But the next slide, Australia helped me realize that America has been telling all of us is that politicians are the saviors, and they care about you. And if you don't like what they're doing, well, just vote them out. As if getting a politician to quit is as easy as getting a divorce. Wait, that's not easy too. What am I talking about? So did y'all ever wonder why you keep seeing posts on the internet talking about Americans disowning their friends and family, or even the workplace being divided over who they voted for? Well, because it's actually happening. I have 2 friends who've known one another their whole life, and they've recently blocked each other on Facebook because apparently they voted for different candidates in the election. So when I visited Australia this year during the federal election and whatnot, I also assumed politics would be all they care about. But then nothing happened. Absolutely nothing bad happened. And I was sitting here like, how can they not break up friendships over politics? Bro, is it possible that they're all the intellectual ones and we the Americans are actually the barbaric and emotional ones? No, it can't be. So I look into how voting works in Australia as compared to America, and apparently voting is mandatory in Australia and made super easy to do so, which means you have more people voting, and the Australian politics will need to have the greatest appeal to the majority of the voters, leading to a less polarized political landscape. But in America, voting remains optional, which means the most difficult thing that politicians will have to do is to get you to leave your house and vote. That's why they behave like celebrities and religious leaders, using fear and hate to try to motivate you. But frankly, I don't think any of them care about any of us. But hey, you don't need them to care about you, as long as you care about yourself and your own personal wealth and success. But even that turns out to be just another lie for Americans, because the next one is you have to brag about how successful you are every second to people around you, because that's what a winner would do. Bro, you ever been to one of those parties where they all be like, hey, I just got a promotion and they pay me 6 digits, man. Can you believe I only bought my house for $1 million? That's a steal. When my friend goes out, we only stay in presidential suite. And I'm sitting here like, what's a presidential suite? And they all look at me like Squidward looking down his neighbors, y'all. Congrats, you win the Capitalism. What am I supposed to say? Bro, not until I came to Australia for the first time did I realize how terribly wrong that is. Because bragging about your personal success actually feels wrong. And nobody really cares about that in Australia. To the point I rarely see any of my Aussie friends celebrating their achievements. Not once did anyone ask me what I do for a living in Australia. When they look at you, they want to know who and what you are as a human being. But in America, we're only seen for our jobs and the size of our bank account. But you know what's even worse than that? People steal in their shoes and walk all over your freaking house. Because why do Americans wear shoes in the house? I don't know. Only that everyone does that. People in the TV shows do that. Your friends do that when they come over. We don't know any better, okay? This will sound like a joke, but when I first came to Australia, I was looking at all the shoes in the hallway in my hotel and thought to myself, why are they tossing away perfectly good shoes? Bro, they're wasteful. That's crazy. Only to realize not just Aussies taking off their shoes when entering a room or a house. And I was like, wait, that's a thing you can do? And then after some crazy eureka moment, I realized, what's the point of not taking off your shoes, bro? Y'all literally get all the downsides like bring rainwater, snow, and dirt into your house, and no upsides. Why does American media tell us it's okay to do this? And it gets to the point that whenever you move to a new apartment in America, you have to pay for like a carpet cleaning service. Otherwise, it would be so dirty you don't even want to stay in the room. But hey, you know what's the one thing you want to do in America because you literally can't do it anywhere else? Well, you get to boss around the waiters like your personal servants because apparently you're the one tipping them money and that makes you a god or something, bro. I'm telling you, working in the hospitality in America is a nightmare I don't even wish on my worst enemy. I mean, if you see how any of the American tourists behave in Europe or Southeast Asia, you know what I'm talking about. Y'all got the snapping fingers to get attention, waving and yelling like crazy as if we're calling over our pets, y'all. All in the name of because we tip you, we feed you and your family, therefore we are superior. But if you try to snap your finger at a waitress or waiter in Australia, they would probably snap your finger right off. And in most developed nations outside of America, the employer is okay, not the customer, but the business owner needs to pay a living wage to staff just so they don't have to rely on tips. But somehow in America, the greatest nation in the world, we can't even figure that out. Also, waiters in America would treat you differently if you dress up like you're rich or you're looking cool, because they want you to tip. And if you look like you can't tip, there ain't gonna be any services. But now we're at the top one. And what is the one American lie I would never believe again after my trip to Australia? Because as Americans, we're brainwashed into believing so many beliefs about our nation. How America is the greatest and we're the only democracy, the one maintaining the global peace, and how without America, there wouldn't even be a 21st century and everyone would still be living in Middle Ages, bro. But only in Australia did I finally learn that not everyone and everything needs America. Hey, in fact, most nations like Australia and New Zealand, they're perfectly fine without America. Since Australia sells most of their goods to China, Japan, South Korea, and India, etc. And yes, based on data I could find, around 600,000 Americans visited Australia last year. But without that, they still got enough tourists from China, the UK, Singapore, Japan, and so on. I'm pretty sure they'll be fine without America meddling in their business. And as Americans growing up, them. We're always told how the only reason we have sent our military personnel overseas is to bring peace and freedom to others, praising the endless invasion of American troops into smaller nations. But what if we're not the superheroes of the world? I mean, seeing how independent the Australian economy is, away from any American influence, and how all of my Aussie friends working in restaurants universally despise American customers due to their selfish behavior really made me wonder, what if nobody needs America and American capitalism? What if the big investment money from America is actually messing up the housing market and making everyone miserable? What if we're the villain all along? But not only did America lie to us about America, they also lie about other nations too. Because in this video, I talk about the biggest lies America ever told us about Australia. And it's worse than you can ever imagine, but you can click on the video to find out what they are.